Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted and privileged to welcome a very, very respected and recognized academician from the UK, Professor Sir Cary Cooper. Sir Cary, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. Sir Cary is the founding president of the British Academy of Management. He's the president of the Institute of Welfare. He's an advisor to the WHO, the ILO, and the EU in the field of occupational health and well-being. He's an author and an editor of over 250 books in the field of occupational health, psychology, workplace well-being, women at work, and occupational stress. And of course, he's been recognized, felicitated, and awarded globally. So, Sir Cary, let's talk today about workplace well-being. How is workplace well-being defined?
Okay, we had the financial crisis, didn't we, of 2008, which went on till about 2012, 2015. I mean, I think we still have elements of it now. I think that stimulated a lot. Well, what it caused was enormous workplace stress. And then organizations, as we came out of the financial crisis, said, we have to do more than just do stress management. We have to do more than, doing the easy, low-hanging fruit stuff of, mindfulness at lunch or the well-being days. We have to make this much more strategic. And the driver, I think, was to retain talent. Staff, particularly and currently, particularly the Z generation and the young millennials. These are looking for a different kind of quality of working life. Their parents went and their parents had mortgages and all sorts of commitments. So they stayed with employers they didn't like. This new generation won't do that.
Correct.
Well-being, therefore, is not, ping pong tables, sushi at your desk, massages, and the well-being day where you have smoothies. It's not about that.
Right.
It's about how do we strategically look at this issue? How do we create a working environment which values people, trusts them, and where there is a good psychological contract between the employer and the employee. So I think it's more about that than just simply stress management.
Well said. And over the last few decades that you've been specializing in this area, what have been some of the challenges you have seen?
I think the big challenge is moving employers away from the low-hanging fruit stuff, which is easy to do. You can have mental health first aiding in the workplace. You can do mindfulness at lunch. You can do, get people to come in and talk about how you should manage your stress and prioritize your work and the rest of it. Getting them, getting employers to move away, particularly HR and occupational health and senior management, particularly senior management, particularly the CEOs and CFOs. How do we move away from that to thinking about employee health and well-being as a big strategic issue? If you want to get the most out of them, you want to retain them, you want to attract new ones, how do you do it? And the way you do it is create the kind of culture that people feel values them. And that is the big challenge, trying to shift that to make it strategic, make it a board issue, make it an important issue by the senior leadership team. And, we've been doing that with organizations for quite a while now. And recently, I think I mentioned to you off-piste when we were talking, but I chair something called the National Forum for Health and Wellbeing at Work, made up of 42 global employers, Microsoft, BT, BP, Shell, it goes on, GSK, Rolls-Royce. And these are HR directors, chief medical officers, and directors of health and wellbeing. We've been meeting for 5 years, and we're not funded. All we do is meet each other on a regular basis and try to do things to improve the quality of working life. You know,
Amazing.
we want good work.
Amazing, amazing. So, a few minutes ago, you said what well-being is not. You said it's not sushi at the workplace and it's not a ping pong table, etc., etc. What is well-being at the workplace?
Okay, I think well-being at the workplace is, if I was breaking it down by the constituent parts, it's reasonable hours, it's flexible working, and where people can work flexibly. There are people who can't work flexibly. There are people who have to be at the coal face, paste assembly line workers, doctors, nurses, bus drivers, pilots. They actually have to be there.
Correct.
But the vast majority of people in service-based economies can work more flexibly. So for me, well-being is made up of a number of constituent parts. Number one, if people want to, they can work flexibly, given the fact we have the technology we have. And since the pandemic, we realized people who unfortunately had to work 100% remotely during much of the last 2 years. But now they don't, but they can work flexibly. And that can be something that is negotiated in the development of a psychological contract between the employer and the employee. Number two is the long working hours. I mean, it's crazy the hours we have. If the more we're allowed to work flexibly, the better. Maybe for those people, by the way, who can't, this may be a part of the well-being thing too. Those people who have to be at the coalface, maybe we have the 4-day working week. There's evidence, quite strong evidence, from Sweden, from Iceland, from New Zealand, from a whole range of countries that shows that a 4-day working week is as effective as a 5-day working week. And for those who can't work flexibly, maybe that's something we have to now consider. Because the demands on people now, given IT and the communication technologies, even emails are overloading people, and it's a big issue. So that's another constituent part. And I'll tell you another one is the line manager. This is really important. So part of the culture is, part of your culture, as you're an employee, who influences you more than anybody? Is it the chief exec? Probably not. It's got, you may meet the chief exec once in a lifetime, but who you do work with and who influences the quality of your working life, your productivity, your performance is your line manager. Here's the problem we have, and this is a part of the well-being scenario. Almost all line managers are promoted or recruited for their technical skills, not their people skills. So in the future, and this is what companies are looking, and this is my national forum has taken on board this, what we need to do is we need to recruit managers and promote internally people into managerial roles based where there's parity between their people skills, their EQ, their emotional intelligence, their social and interpersonal skills, and their technical skills. Unless we get that right, there's going to be a problem because the individual is influenced by the boss.
Well said. Well said. And, when I was preparing to talk to you for this interview, I was reading that there are 5 steps to improve well-being. Connect, be active, take notice, keep learning, and give. I'd love to get your perspective on what are the steps to improve well-being.
Well, that's interesting because that came out of a thing I did for the UK government.
Yes.
So I was the scientific lead for the UK government on something called the Foresight program on mental capital and well-being in the UK. That took me 2 years to do with a big team. And we were looking at all the science and then telling the government, advising the government on the recommendations we should have. When we pulled it out, when we looked at it, we were trying to get a strap line. What are the 5 things that really matter, for an individual? So we were looking at both the individual and what organizations can do to help the individual. And then we were looking at what the individual could do to help themselves. And those 5 that you mentioned are being active, having social connectedness, etc. Now, those 5 are really important for you as an individual, getting good balance in your life, enjoying and the people around you, investing in your relationships.
Mm.
All of those kinds of things are kind of fundamental to
Mm.
an individual. So when we look at well-being, there are two strands of it. Number
Mhm.
one, there's the individual, and number two, in terms of workplace well-being,
Mm.
there's the organization. The organization, we know what we have to do there.
Mm.
What we need to do is we get to get individuals to own up, to participate themselves in their own health and well-being, and the family's health and well-being.
Mm. Well said. And when we talk well-being, Sir Cary, there are, there's an emotional well-being, physical well-being, financial well-being, social well-being. How do we differentiate each one of these, and how do we manage them?
Well, you're right. There is, and by the way, now that we're going into a global recession,
Mm.
we're about to do it, and many countries are already in it, by
Yeah.
the way, like the UK at the moment.
Mm.
Okay, so we're going into a global recession partly because of the war, inflation,
Yeah.
energy problems, crises, and so on.
Mm.
Okay, so financial well-being should be at the top now. A lot of people are going to suffer in this
Correct.
major recession
Yeah.
that we're going to
Yeah.
have. So that's one thing. Social well-being is about staying socially connected. And that is something that people, because a lot of it is online, say you're working, I think it's important to remember face-to-face is quite critical.
Correct.
Online is very helpful. It's nice for you to be able to get in touch with your son and your grandchild, in Singapore, and me with my family and my daughter who lives in LA, and we have to do that virtually, and that's fine. But it's also important to have the face-to-face. So that's about social well-being. Mental well-being to me is about looking after keeping yourself cognitively active, keeping yourself engaged in life and with a lot of people, but engaged, being active. And that applies to people who are retired, particularly people who are retired. So we can offset dementia, maybe forestall it for a period of time anyway, if we're going to end up getting it. So all of those that you mentioned are an important part of the well-being scenario. And now, of course, financial well-being. But you see, if you don't have financial well-being, then it starts to affect the other areas that you mentioned. It affects your mental health. There's a lot of evidence that it will have an impact there. It will probably mean that you start socially withdrawing from relationships. So it affects your social well-being.
Yep.
And all of those are very much interconnected. And if your workplace is bad, if you feel so job insecure, and you start working longer hours, you're damaging your family, i.e. your social relationships. You're damaging your health, i.e. your mental well-being and physical well-being. So to be honest with you, they're interdependent, all those factors.
Fascinating. And in a world that seems to be ready to measure or quantify everything, and given the fact that you work with these 40 global leaders in this big forum, is there any quantifiable measure of well-being?
Oh yeah, there are. I mean, I had a university spinoff, a University of Manchester spinoff company where we're a group of academics. This is what they do in the UK now. Most UK universities have spin-off companies from their academic staff, and we produce psychometric tools, proper ones, to measure well-being. So now many companies in the UK and throughout Western Europe, for example, now do well-being audits using psychometric tools. Well done. I did one which I published in the academic literature. And what they do is they do an audit of their employees, and they, in effect, get employee voice. How do the employees perceive how they're managed, the hours they work, the work-life balance, flexible working, every aspect of their life. And so then it's measured and it done outside of the organization by something, a consulting firm or something outside. So it gets an anonymity, and the organization can and then you break it down demographically. You can say that part of the organization, by doing the audit, has a long hours culture, and that's causing people to get ill. That part of the organization has a bullying line manager, senior manager. That part of the organization has a glass ceiling for women. And so now it's like going to your GP, your general practitioner,
Yeah.
your doctor.
Mm.
You go to your doctor, and as you're walking towards your GP, you don't want your GP to be writing a prescription out before you open your mouth.
Mm.
What you want that doctor to do is to do a diagnosis of you, take your bloods, your blood pressure, talk to you about the symptoms you're experiencing, then make a diagnosis. So we need to do that. And organizations are doing that now in many countries. Very important to use proper diagnostic tools, and they're available. They really are available. And
Right.
then the organization can then plan the strategy it needs to use to deal with the problems it's facing.
Well said. My next question to you is that do men and women handle well-being differently?
Very good question. The answer to that is yes.
Mm-hmm.
They handle it differently. Men tend not to do it as well as women.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you why.
Mm.
Again, we're going back to the EQ, the emotional
Correct.
intelligence issue.
Yeah. Mm.
Women tend to have more EQ than men.
Mm.
That is, they're more sensitive to their feelings.
Yep.
They're able to express their emotions a lot more than men in most developed countries and developing countries. And so they are able to recognize when things aren't going well. And they tend to be able to talk about this with close personal friends, other females, and get it out. And by doing that, can explore how they should deal with their problem. Men tend to bury their emotions.
Yeah.
And by doing that, and because they don't talk as much about their feelings, they don't share their feelings as much, and they feel they should be able to cope by themselves, that becomes a big issue. And so women are better copers than men, know when they need help, tend to go seek help earlier than men do. However, we're beginning to see in the workplace, for example, in the UK, we had the chief executive of Lloyd's Bank a few years ago go in front of all his employees, say, I've got depression, I've got mental health issues, I'm taking some time off.
Wonderful.
He came back and he did a really good job. We have more of that taking place.
Yeah.
We need more of that now, where senior people, because they're human beings like the rest of us, role models start opening up, and that is happening. We're seeing it in hardline professions like football, soccer, where you're getting very senior players, managers talking about their mental health issues. The more we get men to open up and we get role models of men doing it, the better. Women have always done that, one way or another.
Yes.
But particularly in the workplace, everybody's stress has become a 4-letter word for many years.
Absolutely.
And now it has to be something you can freely talk about if we're to get rid of the mental health stigma.
Well said. And a related question to this, Sir Cary, is that does the state of well-being change as one gets older?
Oh, that's an interesting one. It does in lots of ways change. Usually, there's quite a lot of work being done on older workers and people entering retirement. Well, what's happening, by the way, is that because of the global financial situation we're in, people are working longer. They're working much longer than they would have done. I mean, the age of retirement is not 65 anymore. In the UK, I would think it was somewhere in the early 70s, depending on the nature of the work you're doing.
Absolutely.
Right. But on balance, if you have the opportunity to work on, people are working on, partly for the financial reasons, but also partly for health reasons. They want to also stay social. This is social well-being again. They want to stay socially connected because a lot of their relationships are in the workplace. They want to be cognitively active, going back to your 5 points.
Yeah.
And working keeps you cognitively active. So it's not just about the money. It's also about all those other kind of well-being areas that they want to do. So yeah, as you get older, I think it's as good in a way, as long as you're not going and doing a job which is physically and psychologically draining and overpowering and overloading you psychologically. And what is ending up happening is a lot of people, as they get older, shift the emphasis, go into another kind of job.
Correct.
Use the experience they had in a highly stressed job to do something less stressful, but keeping them cognitively and socially active. So there is a move in that direction, which I think is really good.
Wonderful.
And it's good for organizations to have older people around too, because they are stability. They've had a lot of them have experience, and they can help mentor younger people as well. So I'm of the view that older people, being an old person myself, I'm of the view that older people have a role to play within organizations, a different role. It's not the hardline, high stressed role, but the social emotional role of looking after, of calming the organization and looking after people who need looking after.
Very interesting. So time for two more questions. My next question is on culture. You know, you live in such a diverse and in a country which has so many different cultures. And you were just telling me before we were recording that even in your family, it's multicultural now. How does culture impact well-being?
Well, I think well-being, or what is well-being? To me, well-being is about contentment.
Correct.
Either personal contentment, workplace contentment. It's not about happiness, because happiness is a transitory thing.
Correct.
You're happy today, but sad tomorrow. Contentment means basically I'm a content person. I like the job I'm in. I like my personal relationship, my marriage. I like, I feel relatively content with my life. And that doesn't change day to day. It may be one day you're happier than another day, but that's not, that happiness doesn't mean anything to me. What means something to me is contentment. So I think, and we get that in different cultures in different ways. They're different, but you know what? It's everywhere.
It's the same.
There's happiness and well-being institutes in India, in the United States, in Russia, even. It's all over now, and that's basically, I think, because of everything that's been happening, which is very unsettling. The two things that cause people to get ill in life, in terms of well-being, is lack of control and uncertainty. And we have bundles of both of those in the world today, with the leaders we have, who are not the leaders that we used to have. And there's a lot of uncertainty, insecurity, and people feel they have no control. That's why well-being has come to the fore. And it's in every culture.
Absolutely.
In every culture, including Africa. Because if you look at, people would say, well, you don't get depression in among Africans. Yes, you do.
Absolutely.
The depression rates of 1 in 4 getting depressed in a lifetime, right, is true in almost every country in the globe.
Absolutely. Well said. And my last question to you, Sir Cary, and this is for the many, many people, young people who will listen to our conversation. Based on your amazing journey, the leadership roles you have played, the amount you have researched well-being, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want our viewers and listeners to take away from your life's journey and from our conversation?
Okay, it's a very deep question, but let me do it. Let me try to do it. If you ever get into a managerial role in your life, and quite a lot of people will, could be further down a system in the public or private sector. I think it's look after the people. Look after your employees are your children. Think about how you'd like your children to be treated in the workplace, and treat them there like they're your own family. That's one thing. Second thing is, in life generally, just be kind. I mean, it's easy to get angry at somebody who makes a mistake. But that's a human being, and you're going to hurt that human being. And be open. Just be yourself. Don't try to be somebody you're not. But to me, the most important thing is this kindness. I don't think we see enough of it. It's easy to get angry at people who don't do what you want them to do or behave badly. But trying to be kind as much as you can and to help other people. Helping other people makes you live longer.
Well said. Well said. And on that note, Sir Cary, and your three wonderful lessons: look after your people like they're your own children or your family. Be kind in life. Be open. Be yourself. Thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about workplace well-being and for sharing some incredible thoughts about well-being at work, well-being for ourselves. Thank you also for speaking to me about culture and how important there are different aspects of culture that impact well-being. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you very much indeed. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.